being a girl, you kind of were able to like sometimes flirt a little bit to like diffuse situations, or but then on the flip side, if it was a fight, they looked at you like you were the weak link, so they would kind of go after you first. So it kind of you kind of played it either way, but most of the time, like there was one time, um, I was in the 105 precinct. It's called the conditions unit. So you're basically dealing with like the guys who piss on the street, the drinkers, open containers, like the things that kind of bring down the quality of the neighborhood. You're kind of addressing those conditions and, writing summonses for it or making arrests or whatever. So we go out, my partner and I see this group of guys hanging out on the corner, and one of the guys makes like a motion on his waistband. So it's tricky because sometimes they do it without realizing they do it. It's like they see the cops and they're like, oh, I got a gun. Let me make sure it's still there, kind of a thing.
Right.
Sometimes they do that because they know they don't have a gun, but they know we're going to see it because one of their buddies has the gun. So it like helps, we miss the jump on the guy with the gun and we're focusing on this other guy. Or it could have just been a random like movement, but the way that he moved, it kind of looked like we had a gun. So we jump out on him. And I think it was like 5 or 6 of those guys, and it's me and my partner. So I go right up to the guy, I grab him, and you give him a toss, which is like you kind of just feel where, or out on the outside. You're not going into pockets or anything like that. You're just feeling to see if he has a weapon. So I grab him where I saw he went and grabbed, and he just had like a cell phone or something like under his thing. So it kind of looked like a bulge. It was, nighttime, so it's hard to see, but it wasn't anything. So I'm like, all right. So now all these guys are getting aggravated and they're like, yo, what's up? Why are you coming after us? So it was like, I kind of did a little like sly, like giggle. And I'm like, I don't know, how you doing, baby? Like kind of just like flirting a little bit with them. Not because and it wasn't anything like being unprofessional or anything, but it was like, I'm about to get my butt kicked by like 6
Yeah.
dudes. We're
You're trying to
surrounded.
defuse a situation.
Yeah, like I got to get out of here. So, I kind of made like some jokes, like flirting with him and stuff, just to kind of get myself out of that situation. So in that respect, like my partner was like, thank God you're a girl, because, it wouldn't have worked if he had tried something like that. That probably would have ended up in a
We've
fight.
gone the other way.
Yeah, it would have been really bad. But so, like the situations like that kind of helped. And then helping like with domestic violence, with the women who are victims of domestic violence, sometimes they would open up more to a female, kids a lot of the time. So there's benefits to having police. And at that time there was police that are females. There was, I don't know, maybe a handful of women in the precinct that I was in at that time. So it was interesting. But the bad guys on the street did not hold back. If they were going to fight you because they wanted to get away and they didn't feel like going to jail, they were going to hit you just as bad as they were going to hit a dude. They didn't discriminate because you were a girl. So, you had to be, and I always tell the girls who came on, like, if you've never been in a fight before, go take some self-defense classes, like take Krav Maga or do something so that you know how to defend yourself.
Yeah, you get punched in the face. It's something you need to get punched in the face to be prepared to be punched in the face. Because when it happens, it's, you see stars. Like if you expect it, then the situation it's not something you want to learn in a fight.
No, and that happened to me once. I mean, I spoke to the new people who came on after me when I had time on, from experience, because I had gotten into I guess it was like you could call it a fist fight with a guy. He had a BMW in a driveway, and him and this other guy are like working underneath the BMW where the steering wheel column goes into the thing. Like it looked like they were trying to hotwire the car. And it was like, I think it was actually, I was working for some reason during the day or like early evening or something. So there wasn't like a lot of people out. And it was a time when we were really high in stolen cars. Like there was a period where our precinct was like number 1 for stolen cars. So I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, are they trying to hotwire that car? So my partner and I go out just to see what's up, because I'm like, it's still like kind of daylight. I don't know if they'd be doing this, but you don't know. And it just doesn't look right. So we go out to talk to them, and this guy immediately started going at me. You can't stop me. You don't know. And usually when they're throwing static like that, it's because something's up and they're just trying to make you be like, oh, okay, we'll leave you alone. So the opposite happens. Now it's like, okay, why are you throwing off static? What's the problem? Do you just hate cops, or are you up to no good and you're just trying to like, give your buddy a head start on running? So we end up trying to like talk to the guy. And I'm like, listen, trying to calm him down. Like, bro, is this your car? Like, what's going on here? Like, what is it broken? Do you need a jump start? Like, do you need a tow truck? Or I'm thinking in my head, are you trying to steal this car? And now I'm kind of raised up because of the way that he's reacting to me. So he just goes and like checks me, like just checks me right in the chest. And I'm like, what? So in the police department, it's not like equal levels of force. Like, you hit me, I'm hitting you back. Like, that's, you just, there's levels of force that you're allowed to use, and it depends on what's given to you that you're allowed to use a certain level back. So I open palmed him in the nose. I just whacked him right in the nose, and he had like blood trickling down, and I'll never forget the look on his face. And my partner goes to grab one arm and go over the radio and tell where we are, because we're about to have a fight. We got another guy
Yep.
here. I don't know if he's going to jump on his backs. Right now, he's kind of laying low and is kind of talking to his buddy, like, yo, calm down, calm down. I don't know what's going on. So my partner's going to the radio. I go to grab his other arm, and he just cock backs and boom, gets me. Which, I mean, it happens. So he got me right in the head. It was a beautiful haymaker that he landed, and it spun me around. And like, you see stars. I see the
Yeah.
stars, but I'm like, like, all right, get back in, because now my partner's by himself with this guy. So, we get back in and we're rolling around with him, and I'm on the radio giving our location just over the radio, just, we need some help here, because by now, like, I'm still seeing stars. My vision is completely blurred because my eye is tearing. And I'll never forget when the guys got there, they all looked at me and they gave me like a weird look. And I'm like, oh, my makeup, my makeup must be running because my eye's tearing. So I'm thinking I look like some kind of freak show. So I go running over. So now, the other guys have him and they're handcuffing him, whatever. He's still fighting. It got a little hairy too, because like the people in the neighborhood kind of came out, and everybody surrounded us with the cameras out. And well, back then it wasn't cameras, it was like the flip phone things or whatever, taking pictures. And like, you don't know who's enemy, who's foe, who's going to jump on my back, who's going to help me out, you have to assume that everybody is an enemy at this point. So, I'm just trying to yell at everybody to get back. The brother, I hear him yelling, like, stop fighting the police, stop it. So the other cars finally get there. They put him into handcuffs or whatever. So I go running over to a side view mirror of a van to take a look at my makeup. And I'm like I look and I'm like, well, my makeup doesn't really look too bad because I wore like liquid eyeliner. And I look and I got a huge unicorn knot on the top of my head. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is horrible. So my partner had gotten hurt. So I helped him over to an ambulance. And then my sergeant was like, you need to go to the hospital and get that thing checked out. You have a unicorn, horn on the top of your head. So I get into the ambulance, and it was, maybe 5 or 10 minutes later. And I said to the guy that was in the ambulance with me, I'm like, bro, can you just take a picture of my head so I can see like how bad it actually looks? Because I was only looking at the side of the mirror. So he takes a picture, and like my whole face looked like it was just swollen up, disgusting. So, went to the hospital, got checked out. I had a concussion. I was out sick. A week later, I come back, and I'm walking past the arrest processing area, which is a couple of computers and like a little area with paperwork and stuff. And I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I look, and there's my picture with the knot on my head bouncing around as a screensaver on all of the computers in the arrest processing room. And I'm like, these guys got me so
Yeah.
good. Like, the ball busting was a part of like being a cop. We have like a very disturbed sense of humor. So I was like, okay, fair enough. They blasted that picture everywhere. It was pretty good. Every day I went into work, it was like, you know, what's going to happen tonight? I have no idea. Next thing you know, you're like chasing some guy into a dark alley, or like one time I fell out of a police car, just like chasing somebody, like just crazy, insane stuff happens. It's
Fell
just
out of
fun.
how do you fall out of a car?
Yeah. So, so my partner and I were driving around, and there was a Radio Run Central, who's the radio dispatcher, raises us up, and she's like, I have a man with a gun. He's like wearing a white t-shirt. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a block away. So we turn the corner, and it was like in the middle of the street. So on the left side was a school, and there was like a driveway sort of opening in the fence halfway down the block. So there's like a couple of trees, and there's like a street light, and in like the circle of light that the street light illuminates on the street was this guy. And here he is. And I turn the corner, and my partner kind of like slows the car down, and maybe 10, 15, 20 feet away, because we don't know if he's got a gun. It's dark. I can't really see his hands. Central's trying to call the complainant to see, like, does he have a gun? How did you see this gun? What's going on? Is this the guy? Is he still there? Do we have the wrong guy? And he's looking at us, and I'm like, it's him. You just know it's him.
Right.
So I'm trying to see his hands to see if he's got a gun. It's hard to see. So I pull the door open a little bit, like I unhook it because I'm ready to jump out and use the car as cover to, like, give him orders to end this scenario safely so we don't have like shots going off on this block. And as soon as I like unlatch the door, he takes off through the driveway of the school. So my partner guns the car and makes the quick left to drive into the schoolyard. And as he goes left, I go right out the car. And I just
Right.
remember like tumbling out of control. And because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt because I was ready to jump out on him. So I'm just flying. We used to have these summons tins, which are actual tins where you put your paperwork for summonses and complaint reports and accident reports. So you have all these metal tins, my radio, everything just comes flying out with me. I'm tumbling. I remember thinking, like, just tuck your head in so you don't, like, get knocked unconscious. And I rolled uncontrollably and I slammed into a tree that was on the curb.
You guys aren't slowing. You're slowing down, but you're still going fast.
Yeah, like it was like 0 to 60. Like my partner gunned it. We were going.
Okay.
So because we didn't want to lose the guy in the dark park. It was like we got to go follow this guy in there. So I hit the tree and I just remember being like, oh, like I hit it with like force. And I get up and I'm like, I got to get my radio. And I see my radio on the ground. I grab it and I go running into the park after this guy. And I hear my partner behind me yelling, where the hell are you going? You just got thrown out of the car. Like, forget the guy. Like, are you, are you okay? So I was like, I just ignored him. I just went running into the park and I'm like, I don't want to turn my flashlight on because that gives away my position. So I kind of lower the radio so he can't kind of make me out. So I'm like, creeping around trying to see if I see movement in the shadows. And I'm like jogging lightly through the park as I'm like looking around corners and stuff. And I don't see him. And I get to the other side of the playground and he's gone. He's in the winds. We never, it's an open ended. We never found the guy, but my partner ended up stopping some other guy. Like it's like a dark night. There's not a lot of people out. All of a sudden, we got two guys in white t-shirts just walking around where we are. So my partner had stopped another guy. I hear him yelling, so I go running over to him and to help him out. But it was a different guy. But
I'm assuming it's the guy who ran,
I
who's the
would
guy
I
who
would
looks
think that it
like.
would be, but he wasn't like sweating or out of breath or anything. So I don't think that it was. But he had come from like the other side of the playground. So I think my partner thought that he
No,
had
I
and was
don't
just
mean
walking. But
I don't mean the guy that your partner stopped. I meant like the guy that ran is the guy we're after. Your partner
yeah.
sounds like he jumped out and said, "Hey, there's a guy in a white shirt. Let's stop him." Well,
Yeah.
no, this guy went. I think the guy that ran that way is our guy. Well, this guy's got a white shirt, so
Yeah.
like,
It was fair. He saw him coming in the direction, so I was
but it
like, "All
could
right,
have been
whatever." But
him. You're saying it could
it
have been
wasn't
him.
him. It wasn't. It could have been, but it wasn't him. So, that was a fun time. So my boss shows up to the scene afterwards because it's a man with a gun. So you have a couple of guys coming. So he shows up and my partner tells him like, Marique just fell out of the car. And he's like, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And he's like, you're bleeding. So I had like road rash on my arms and my hands from like getting like scraped along the concrete. I was thrown out of the car. I'm like, I'm fine. Let's just go to the next
Right.
job. I'm good. Being a girl was a little interesting in the NYPD when I came on because there were not a lot of females. When I came
Right.
on, the girls that were on were like hardcore. Like these were tough chicks. Like you did not mess with them. They were harder than the guys sometimes. Like they were just, some of them even carried the revolvers still at that time. So they had like the low slinging belt, like the Clint Eastwood thing, and they would like walk around and, they were just rough and tumble chicks and they could hang with the guys. So it was really
Yeah.
important to me to be able to like hold up I'm not a feminist in any way, but I just wanted to be able to show the guys like, yeah, you can trust me. If you get into a fight, I'm going to jump in there and help you out, and cuff the guy up. I'm not going to be one of these, girls that runs the other direction that's scared to get involved. So it was important to me to be able to hold up the reputation that these hardened women had achieved with, just being good cops. They were great street cops. I had a female partner for a long time, and she and I went to like they call it a lift job where you have like an elderly person who falls and they can't get back up again. So the man had fallen, the wife comes to the door and she opens the door and she's like, oh, they sent females. And I'm like, all right, see you later. I'm out of here. You don't want help? Then don't, like, what, are you serious right now? So I guess she was really in a jam because she's like, oh, no, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Come back. And I'm like, all right, where is he? And I mean, the guy soaking wet was probably 100 pounds. It wasn't like he was like a big. So, we lifted him up and we helped him out and, whatever. And, she was like, oh, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, yeah, well, don't underestimate us, man. I had to pass the same or similar, physical tests that the dudes did. Like, you know, so it was the people that, and especially like the perps.
How long was it until you went to you were in homicide, right?
No, I
Oh, okay.
no, I never went to the detective squad. So when I was in the 105, I did patrol for like 5 years. Then I went to conditions unit. Then I went to SNU, which was street narcotics enforcement. And then I went to anti-crime. And then I went to the field intelligence office, which was basically me and my boss. And we debriefed prisoners that came in there and gathered information on, who's got guns, who's selling drugs, what kind of gang beefs are there, whatever. And we would sign up informants and, do search warrants. And then I did that for, I guess, like 10 years. And I went into, they had started an animal cruelty unit. And that was my real passion, was like animal cruelty. And, I'm a big like animal rights activist. So don't hurt any more gators because that's horrible. But as long as they eat the meat, it's like, okay.
There's plenty of gators.
Yeah, that's they've been here for like thousands of years. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah.
One of my old bosses was he was an avid my boss in the intel unit was an avid hunter. He would go like hunting upstate or whatever every whatever the season is, and he knew that I was like this huge animal rights activist. So every day I would come into the office and he'd have on the TV like the hunting program and like watching little baby Bambi getting shot and killed and like gutted and stuff. And I'm like, seriously. So,
Where,
I'm not
where
really to
are you
yeah.
in Florida?
Yeah, yeah, we moved to Florida after,
Okay, come
we
on.
retired, so
Yeah, so my wife and I go walking in the morning. We're supposed to be jogging. Sometimes we jog. But mostly it's walking. It's like an 80-20 mix. Um,
That's
so
fair.
but we probably go around 1, 2, 3. There's 4 ponds that we go around. There's huge ponds. There's at least 2 gators in every single pond that we go around. I mean, they're everywhere. And I grew up in Temple Terrace, right across from the Hillsborough River. And it's probably once a month animal control was out there dragging some alligator out of somebody's pool or dragging it out of the front yard. Like it's just super common, And that's why I'm like, listen, we're not running out of alligators. Like
Yeah.
these are everywhere.
They're over it's the wildlife down in Florida is a different I was very big into hiking. I would hike, like, the Adirondack Trail. Like, I would always go upstate and go hiking, and I was an outdoor person. I love the beach. I lived 10 minutes from the South Shore beaches my whole life, so I lived on the beach. And we moved down to Florida, and I'm like, there's like the econ area, and I'm like, nope, not going there. You see like the lake or whatever, and in upstate New York, it's like, oh, you go stick your feet in the lake and cool off or whatever, swim around. Not down here. I'm like, the good Lord did not really intend for man to live in Florida because it's like
Mhm.
Jurassic Park down here. You have these giant sandhill cranes with these long beaks that want to peck your eyeballs out that walk around. The gators, the mosquitoes. I'm like, this place is legit. Like,
The
I need
mosquito.
civilization in Florida.
Yeah, listen, the heat,
Yeah.
the mosquitoes, it's, listen, I I was doing a shoot one time, and I'm just gonna tell you this because this is so obnoxious, but my my wife these guys just walked into it. And I was doing a shoot one time and I was like reviewing a movie. I know, reviewing a yeah, no, I was reviewing a movie, like a con man movie or something, and there was a mosquito or something. Like, no, it was a mosquito was flying around, and somebody goes, "Wait, wait!" The camera guys are like, "Wait a second, there's a mosquito," and they're like, "Where is it? Where is it?" And I'm, kind of looking, and I said, "Well," I said, "Bro, we just keep shooting." I said, "I'm not worried about it." I said, "They don't bite me," and somebody goes, and I think it was, I want to say it was my wife goes, she goes, "Why?" And I go, "Out of respect." Okay. Listen, she just like these guys were everybody just bawled out laughing and they were just so anyway, she just walked right into it.
That's
No.
awesome.
So uh so what was and I was gonna say when you were saying that, people coming off the street that you're interviewing and for information or criminals you arrest and you interview. I was, but what about the code?
There
What
is
about the
no
street code?
code with that. There is no code when your ass is on the line. People are going to, they will tell, and it's you. They can't. Everybody at the end of the day is out to save his own skin. That's just,
Oh,
and
listen,
you got to capitalize on that. And I mean, I guess, yeah, from your perspective, it's like these guys are rats, right?
from
But
my perspective, what are you talking about? I got 26 years and 4 months. Didn't
you,
even do 13 years. So I, I hear you. You know how many times I get these guys that come here and they talk and they tell me their story and I'm thinking like, mandatory minimum guidelines. They're like, yeah, so they caught me with like 2 keys of hair. I had a really good lawyer. I'm like, yeah. And I only got 5 years. You got caught with 2 kilos of in the federal system and you got 5 years? Come on, listen, I hear you.
yeah.
And I'm with you, bro. You did the right thing. I'm not judging you. But I feel like that's 15 minimum, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
so
what do you have to do what you have to do, right? And it
yeah, no,
benefits
listen,
us because it's like I mean, the more every gun I got off the street was somebody that didn't get shot, whether it be a cop or a civilian or
right.
like another drug dealer. Like it wasn't really, I didn't look at it like, and sometimes you have to tell these people like, don't think of it like you're ratting people out. Think of it like you're going to try and make the neighborhood you live in safer because I don't live here. You do. You need to make the people who are scared to come out of their houses, you need to make them feel safer. And every gun we take off the street is a way to do that. That's just what it is. And you don't have to go to jail.
Yeah. Bonus.
Yeah, big bonus. But for a while, it was like in New York State, if you got caught with a gun, an illegal gun, you were doing 2 years. There
Right.
was no plea bargain. Now it's like the plea bargaining is so insane. I don't even know if people are really doing considerable time for having like an illegal firearm. But back then it was like, you're going away. So
Mm.
it didn't really felicitate like cooperation because they're like, if I don't do 2 years for this gun, they're going to know that I'm cooperating. So I can't help you. So it was like, yeah,
I
good
listen,
point.
I knew a guy who got like 25 years and he cooperated. And when he went to be sentenced, they were going to give him 178 months. So he has a mandatory minimum of 25. Or sorry, minimum mandatory of 25. So he gets there and because he cooperated, they were going to give him 78 months. And he went and he literally asked the judge, can you give me 180 months? Because that would be
Yeah.
the mandatory minimum. If you don't count the priors, if you count one less prior, it wouldn't have been 25, it would have been 15. So he's like,
Right.
can I get 180? Because if you give me 178 and I go in with that paperwork, they know I cooperated because of my charge.
Right.
And so the judge is like, I'll give you 180. And he's like, okay. Went in with 180. And listen, you want to talk about somebody who walked around. First of all, everybody in there, he called a snitch. He thought everybody was a snitch. And he walked around with that paper like in his pocket. If somebody said anything, I got 180. If I cooperated, and they'd be like, oh man, I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
That
Stop it.
projection is really good. Call other
It's
people what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a horrible situation. But yeah, it was killed me because um like the whole street code thing is like you're protecting people that don't care about you, that aren't going to help you when you go to prison, that
That'll
aren't
sell
talking.
you out. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I literally know a guy that I wrote a story about because when I went to federal prison, I started writing guys' stories, right? I started writing true crime stories because I'm an opportunist. So, there was nobody in there that could write. And I realized after writing one story that you could sell these things for options. So I said, I get out of here with a bunch of stories. Maybe I can sell some options. So I did a story on one guy, never been in trouble, ends up he brazen the projects, ends up getting his concealed weapons license, and ends up being a guard for like Cash Logistics is a company that moves money. They move money for banks and stuff, right?
Okay.
So he and his buddy decide that they're going to rob the place where he works. They're going to set him up to get robbed. So he sets it up so he gets robbed. They get 3.5 million. FBI knows immediately he's involved in it. I mean, he's a numbskull. So, and the guys were idiots too, but they'd been to federal prison for robbing banks. So then he turns around. They screw him out of the money. He gets maybe a couple. I think he got like 200,000-300,000. They're supposed to give him 1 million and change. They're supposed to split it in thirds. They end up giving him like 10%, 300 grand. They keep whatever. So he spends the money. He blows the money right away. He has no idea what to do with this money. So he buys just stupid shit, gives it away to people. Um,
This sounds
and
like the
so
Goodfellas with the fur coat.
oh yeah, just an
Get it
idiot.
out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. So a year later, he decides, you know what? I'm going to rob one of these places, one of these things myself. So he robs a truck himself. He does get the money, but he doesn't even get home before the cops have him. So when the FBI comes in, they say, look, you're going to do like 10 years just for this robbery. But we know you were involved in the other robbery with these two guys. Now, nobody's talking right now, but if you talk, we can give you a pass on that robbery and we can knock your 10 years or 15, whatever it was, we can knock it down. You do 5-6 years, you'll be home. He said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that. Anyway, he gets sentenced. He gets whatever it was, 10-15 years. 6 months later, the FBI arrests the other two guys. They
Okay.
immediately cooperate. They cooperate against him. He gets reindicted. He gets additional 10 or 15 years. He ends up with 25 years. They end up with less than 10 years. They're out on the street right now. He's still serving the original
Yeah.
25. And they've been in and out of prison. But see, they'd been in and out of prison. They knew how it worked.
Right.
And these are the same guys that go to prison and call everybody a snitch.
There's no
But
honor amongst thieves. Yeah.
oh no. And now he's in prison. Like he was then in prison trying to cooperate. Now it's like you got nobody to cooperate for. You're not a career criminal. You don't know anybody.
Right.
It's too late. And the
There's
FBI
no
is like, you had
leverage.
a chance.
Yep.
Like you had a chance. Like what? But I mean, that's what happens is these guys, you go to prison. They say, don't say anything. They don't send you money. They don't come to see you. They
Yep.
steal everything in your house. I mean, it's just, they get caught, then they turn around, they cooperate against you. I mean, and you see it so much. Like I'd seen it by the time I got arrested the second time. My second federal sentence, I was like, that's not happening this time.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
better now.
Your mama is the only one putting money in your commissary when you go away. Like
Wow.
there's
Why do you say that? My mom came to see me every 2 weeks for
Oh, good
almost
woman.
13 years.
Good woman. Yeah.
All those guys that I didn't ever say anything about the first time I got arrested, they didn't
Never
answer
saw
the
him again.
phone,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
mean,
people don't
that's part
realize.
of the bargaining tool is like, we got you on this one, right? It is what it is. And I would be very straightforward with these people. I wasn't into lying, right? That's just not good karma. That's not the way if you tell a lie, now it has to be the truth. And it's too complicated to make lies truth. So I would just be straight up with them. Like, listen, we got you dead to rights. You're going to go do time. Like I would have to go to Rikers Island sometimes, which was like the jail for holding prisoners for New York City. And I hated it. It was dirty. It was noisy. It was loud. Forget about like all the fights and the shivs and all the other stuff that goes on. Just, like I was just, the place is just a nightmare. I'd be like, do you really want to go to the island and be stuck there? These guys that are going to get caught, they're going to, they're going to rat you out as soon as you get caught. Like it's a survival. Do you want to survive and like be able to be okay? And maybe we can help you like straighten your life out. I mean, we had a couple of people that were like, drug addicts and you don't, it's tricky to sign them up, but it was more like some people I felt like mentoring, not even like signing up as an informant, just be like, bro, we got to get you on the straight and narrow. You got to clean your life up, like let's find God. Let's get the Bible, get a job. Let's try and get you away from this and get out of that life. Because granted, there are like criminals that are like bad dudes. They just
Mm.
have no empathy. They will kill you. They don't care. They don't care who they hurt or, what they steal or there is no like conscience there. But then there are a few that get into the life because they didn't have a father figure and they hung out with their boys and their boys got into drugs and gang stuff and whatever and inner city stuff. And that's the only thing that they knew, right? That's all that they know. So they don't know like going to a job 9 to 5. I mean, that's like an unrealistic expectation for them. Is like, you want me to go and deal with rush hour traffic every day and work from 9 to 5 and make 50,000 a year? I can sling crack and sleep all day and make 100 grand a week. Like, why would I ever be a normal person? So it was tough to see, because you just see this repetitive thing of like these 15, 16-year-old kids of, they're getting into trouble, and it's like, the life they're going to lead. And so you try and, if they're not going to cooperate with you, or, whatever, you just try and push them onto the right direction. Like, I was you once, man. I used to run from the cops, and, like, I did all that stuff, but now I am a cop because you get too old and you can't run anymore. Like, there's only
Right.
so many fences you can hop in your life. So,
It's funny. My wife, she got indicted on like a huge meth conspiracy out of Okeechobee before I met her,
okay.
and she was going to trial, and she was going to trial because in her mind she thought they didn't catch me with anybody, and the only people that they've got are friends of mine. They're not going to cooperate. So, in the feds, I don't know how it is in the state, but you get your witness list about 10 days before trial. I mean, you can imagine what that witness list looked like. She was
Everybody. Yeah.
like, like, no, nobody was willing to spare me, like, it's like, no, like every single person had signed up that she was. And of course they've already taken pleas, or they're getting pleas. And it's funny too. She's like, you knew something was wrong because the lawyer would come see them, or they'd take them out and they'd come back in and they'd be glancing at you. They go, "Hey, what's up?" And they'd put them in, because when they arrest them all, they put them in the same pod. Right. And then,
Really? Okay.
yeah, well, because
At the
when they
same time?
initially, yeah, well, I'm not saying all like 40 people, but let's say you've got 15 or 20 people that are in the same U.S. Marshals, the holdover together, and there's 150 people. And so you've got like 30 of your co-defendants. Well, what happens is, as their lawyers come and see them, come and see them, come and see them. And then one day they come in and they have this look. And then one day, and the next thing you know, then they lock everybody down. And the next thing you know, the cops come to them and they take them and all of their legal work and they move them out of the pod. And right then they just added their name to my witness list.
Yeah.
And then the next person, a week later, this person gets moved. It's like they're all being moved to the same pod, you know, and and that's what had been happening for her. She was like, so I felt like something was wrong, but,
Uh,
but then when she
you get
got the
that sick
witness
feeling.
list, yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then of course she turned around and went, said, hey, call her lawyer and said, look, I want to plead guilty, and the original 3-year offer was off the table.
Yeah. Too late.
Now
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
gotta jump on it.
and in the feds, you can go to trial and get 20 years, or you can take 5 years. She's like, I'll take 5 years. There's a little over 5 years, but she's like, I'll take that, because that beats the 20 that if I lose, and I know I'll lose, because you got 8 people that are all going to get on the stand and say, absolutely, she was
Yep.
supplying me, she was this, she was that. And it's a it's a hard lesson to learn when you're hanging out with these guys and your friends. And I even know police officers who have, they're undercover for a year. I've interviewed guys who've been undercover for 6 months or a year or 2 years. They're like, and you're eating with these guys and you're hanging out, and you have to keep reminding yourself, like, God, you're laughing with them and joking with them, and and you're like, this is not a bad guy. It's
Yeah.
and then that I'm going to be arresting this guy at some point. But he's like, so, you feel bad because, the undercover guys are like, of course, some undercover guys are like, the more they get to know him, they're like, oh, this guy's a scumbag. Like, I can't
Right.
wait for this to end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. And then, what's so funny is you've got the street guys that sell drugs that are always talking about snitches and not trusting this guy and these guys. And the truth is, and the truth is like the El Chapos of the world cooperated. You heard what
Yes.
happened with El Mayo,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Mayo
Yeah.
Zambada.
Yeah. Everybody always turns. Yeah.
Can you imagine that old guy? The guy's like in his 70s. He's like, he's never been arrested. There's like 2 photographs of him. He's with El Chapo's son, checking out some airfields. Clock, throw a bag over his head, tie him up, throw him in the plane, and fly him. You couldn't. You
Yeah.
couldn't if you saw that in a
Like
movie,
a
you know what you'd
movie.
say? You'd say, that's not reasonable. That would never
Yeah.
happen."
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's we tried to kind of outsmart the perps when we would have a few guys in or something, especially if they were all arrested for like the same crime, you separate them immediately
Yeah,
so that they can't like, but I would always, and even if we had, because we had like one cell area, we had like two separate cells. So no matter who was in there, if I had one guy in there, I would kind of feel him out in the cells, see if he wanted to talk to me or whatever, and then leave him. But if I had more than one guy in there, because they're all going to go down to central booking, which is the holding place for arraignment, right? They're all going to, and then they're going to know people who are there, and they're going to start talking and be like, yo, that guy was upstairs in that chick's office for a long time. He ratted, like when they come down and they're not hungry anymore and they have like the chicken grease and, a soda, it's not a good look because now, you're putting this guy, he's going to get his ass kicked in the cells. So I would always take everybody and let everybody see. And I would keep track of the time so that I knew like everybody kind of came up into my office and was debriefed for a certain period of time, whether they were cooperating or not. Some people didn't want to talk. So I'd be like, you want a cigarette, hang out, ask about, because you never know. Once you get to know somebody, people like to talk.
yeah,
So I would just be like, I'd almost sometimes pretend like I wasn't even paying attention to them. Like, you want a cigarette? You want a soda? Okay, cool. You know anything about this, that, and the other thing? No, I don't know anything. Oh, all right, cool. And then go like this. And then you just start talking to them about, the baseball game or, the football game or who are your draft picks or something. And then you kind of start leading into other stuff. And sometimes that would warm them up. But I always kept track of the time. If anybody was in the cells, I always brought like everybody up. And that way I wouldn't have like a guilty conscience that if they got their ass kicked in jail, it was because they knew that they had cooperated with me. But I would tell them flat out, like, listen, man, I would release you right now. Cause some crimes in New York City, you can release on a desk appearance ticket. You don't have to send them to arraignments. And I would tell them, I could do that for your crime, but it's not a good idea. You're going to go to the bookings and you're going to go see the judge just like everybody else because we don't want to raise people up. You come back later and come and talk to me. So you had to be very careful because you need people to cooperate, but you don't need it out there that they're cooperating with you.
yeah.
So, it was, but it's smart for people who get locked up to cooperate. It's the smart move because if it's not going to be you, it's going to be them. And, that whole thing, snitches get stitches. Snitches don't get stitches. Snitches
That's
get no jail
just the
time,
best
and
time.
they
Yeah.
get yeah, like that's it. So it
Listen,
was,
when I first got locked up, right, and I had like 26 years, so it was going around. The guys are like, "That's a white collar guy. He got 26 years." So guys are coming up to me, and this is really more like when I said this at the medium too. I went to a medium security prison. Guys would be like, "Bro, how much time did you get?" I go, 26 years. It was actually 26 years and 4 months, but I don't like to say the 4 months. It makes it sound like I'm whining. So,
yeah.
you
What
know,
does 4 months matter after 26 years? That's like,
exactly.
yeah.
So I'd be
That's
like
like a long
26 years,
nap. Yeah.
right? I got, yeah. So I was gonna say I have more time standing in line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I would go, I'd be like, oh, I got, 26 years. I go, but they go, man, that's fucked up. I go, yeah. I said, well, I could be out of here tomorrow. Somebody might fuck up and tell me where there's a body. And they'd be like, damn, bro, it's like that. I go, oh, it's exactly
Yeah.
like we're not friends,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, okay. Okay. And they but I joke around a lot, I don't think they realize how serious I was.
Yeah.
It was like
It you
7 years in before I got my sentence reduced.
yeah.
So I got it
It's
reduced twice.
that's lucky. That's just lucky that you, like,
A
knew
lot
the
of
right
hard work.
stuff and everything, and yeah.
It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
You know, and and it's funny because I'll be interviewed by other guys who've been locked up. I was interviewed by this guy named Ian Bick, and he was like, and he got like all of like 3 years or something, and he's big on like not cooperating. It's like, bro, you got 3 years.
Yeah.
Anybody can be a stand-up guy for 3 years. But he's like, damn, bro, like like you weren't concerned about being a snitch, and I was like, well, no. I was like, Ian, you're not going to believe this, but at some point I had to make the choice, 26 years in prison or the respect of my fellow inmates. I said, you know, you're not going to believe this.
That's
It,
such
wa-
a hard decision.
it wasn't though, it was, you
Yeah.
know.
It
So,
it always it always people will always tell you when they're faced with the reality of their situation, they're gonna cooperate, and you can't blame them for it. And, I would get irritated because I'm like, "Cut the rat crap out. Just stop it with that stupid, name on yourself." It's self-preservation. You're doing this because you're gonna help other people, you're gonna make your neighborhood safer, and you're gonna get other bad people in jail. And, you're gonna work off your time.
oh,
It's just what it
listen,
is.
I got no problem. You can call me a rat. For 12 years off my sentence, I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be in prison right now. My
Yeah.
outdate was 2030. You can I got
Oh
people in the
gosh.
comments that call me a rat, like, "You rat piece of" absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm leaning into it. It was
Yeah.
the right call.
Yeah. I
I
wish I knew more. I wish I had more names I could have given. Yeah.
I mean, my god. Um, yeah, what's so funny too is, like, the people that cooperated against me, I talked to all of them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, I don't bring it up or anything, but, "Hey, I'm no problem." I got one guy that cooperated against me. He doesn't talk to me, but he never went to prison, and I'd talk to I'd love to have dinner with him. I'd love to go hang out with him. Like, "I got no problem. You did the right thing." So,
There is that with, like, the perps and with, a lot of the cops, because we would know each other, so you'd run into the same people all the time. So I had, like, this one gang that was, for a while, like, a really driver of crime. It was, they were doing all kinds of credit card fraud and all this other stuff, and shootings, and, territory beefs and stuff. So they would see me, and I knew them, and it'd be like, "Yo, what up? How you doing? What's up?" Because it was like a mutual respect, I guess, a little bit. And it was, like, it was an understanding that, like, sometimes I'm going to catch you, and sometimes you're going to get away with it, and we're going to play it like that. But, like, you see them get arrested, and it's like, "Bro, what happened this time, man? You want a soda? You want something to eat?" Like, we would know each other. And, like, one time, this one guy,
it's like
he's
the
really good.
coyote and the sheepdog, right?
Yeah, like,
Sam,
yeah, like,
are you
yeah, it's like a nod of respect, like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And it was also nice because when these guys knew they got caught, they didn't play this game of, like, resisting and fighting and throwing punches and stuff. That was almost looked at by them as, like, a rookie move of a perp, where you're, like, fighting the cops. Like, you got caught, go deal, the judge is gonna cut you a break, you're gonna get a plea, you don't need to fight. So it was an appreciation of us, that it was like, "Okay, we got you, turn around, put your hands behind your back, it's over." But, I would see them on the street. One time, this guy got his good buddy got killed, and, they had the whole gang is out on their corner, and, representing or whatever. And we were driving around because we wanted to make sure we didn't have retaliation shootings, and make sure these guys weren't going off with guns to go shoot whoever it was that, did the shooting or whatever. And, so I see the guy on the corner, and he was hysterical crying. And I just, I know he's done a lot of illegal stuff, and I know that he's not the nicest person to his fellow humans, but he was hurting, and I felt bad for him. And I actually, like, I got out of the car, and I was like, "Bro, I'm so sorry for your loss." And I gave him a hug, because I felt for this guy. He was like, it was like his non-blood brother, and I
right?
felt for him. And like, before I retired, I would see other guys from the same thing, and they would be like, "Yo, Mons, what are you doing out on the street, son? You're about to retire. You shouldn't be out here. You should be, like, in the precinct hiding out." And, like, they were like, "Yo, we'll roll you a blunt for when you retire, if you want to come smoke with us." And I'm like, "Yeah, no. Thanks for the offer. I don't I don't want to be smoking on your porch, and, get locked up by my fellow officers that I just, retired from." But, it was like a mutual understanding and respect. And they did bad things, and when they did bad things, they had to go to jail for it, and they had to answer for it, and that's what it was. But it's, you work in the same place for a long time, you see the same people, and there's a code. And I wish they hadn't chosen that life. It was like wasted talent, but that's what they chose. And, sometimes we got lucky and caught them, and sometimes they got lucky and got away with it.
Yeah, I interviewed a retired FBI agent named Jim Diorio, and he was funny. He had locked guys up for he's like, "I've locked these guys up for like 15 years. Like, these are mobsters, wise guys, stuff like that." He's like, he said, 15 years goes by, or 10 or 12 years, and they get out of federal prison, and he said, and I'm in New York, like I'm at a restaurant. I hear some guy say, Jim DiOrio. He like looks over and the guy's like, hey, it's me, Paulie. Remember? And then he's like, what are you doing? He's like, what's going on? He's like, you go over, you sit down, you talk to him for a little bit. Like, I'm eating with someone, but I'm glad. Yeah, I got out like a year ago, bro. How you doing? And
Yeah.
he's like, this guy was, robbing banks, or this guy was, whatever he was doing, and at the time, what, he's like, he was a big tough guy, and he was serious, and he was, go fuck yourself. I ain't got nothing to say, or whatever the case may be, and got 15 years. And then he gets out, 12 years later. And he's like, it's just like they do what they do and you do
Yeah.
what you do. And that's the way the world works. And there's no reason to be angry. And he's playing his part when he gets arrested. And, but the thing, I was going to say one more thing I was going to say about the cooperation thing is that it's like, let's face it, most police work most cases get solved through some type of cooperation.
Yeah.
And so, unless it's somebody grabs a purse and the cops chase them down, or they run a red light and they chase them down, like they're there for the event. Like, typically you need the neighbors, or you need mostly it's other criminals to get caught and say, look, I know there was a murder 6 months ago. I know where the guy is and I know where the gun is, and I was there. I can help you with that. So,
Right.
is it in his own interest? Of course, but that's everything. And life is in your own interest. So, to me, I will talk to these guys who will be like, yeah, you should never cooperate. Okay. If you didn't cooperate, society wouldn't function. Law wouldn't function. And you think, in your sick mind, these guys think that they would be okay in that society. But the truth is, that's chaos, that's anarchy, and it's
Yeah.
chaos. And you couldn't function there. And even if you could function, your wife and your children and your mother and your older mother and older father and your sibling, most people can't. Like, it doesn't function like that. Like, you're delusional to think not cooperating is the way to help society in general. So I just thought, I've thought about that, many times when these guys say that, and, typically I just laugh it off. But when you really think about it, it's like, somebody has to help, because the cops just can't do it on their
Yeah.
own. There would have to be surveillance cameras everywhere. And then I'm not even sure, you'd have maybe AI. Maybe if you had cameras everywhere and AI was running those cameras and watching them, maybe eventually we'll get to that. But it's not happening right now.
Yeah, cooperation is like the criminal currency. You have to do it for self-survival, and you have to do it to, it's
Well,
just, it has to be done, because otherwise the bad guys are like gonna really, I mean, the real bad guys that like really, I mean, I was doing a lot of like animal cruelty stuff, of like just brutal acts on animals that were just absolutely horrific. And a lot of the time it was because we had tips. We got tips from people that, this guy did this, or I see this dog, I see this is going on, and they would videotape it and send it to us or whatever. And then, that was the only way that we would know that, this dog gets beat with a baseball bat on a near daily basis, and, has every rib in his body broken, and is just sitting there suffering, starving to death slowly, and getting beaten. And if it wasn't for somebody speaking up and saying something about it, you would never know. So police work, I think, really relies on people like that for the good of society. People, in my opinion, who hurt animals, just, they have no empathy towards anything. There's no excuse for hurting something innocent, hurting children, babies, the shaken baby syndrome. There's no excuse for it. And these people are dangerous, and they need to be taken off the street. And, the only way sometimes you do that is by an informant, whether it be like a registered or like a tipster.
right. Yeah, I was going to say, animals don't call 911. You
Yeah,
know,
they just sit there and take the
right.
abuse. Yeah. Or they're used as like leverage too. Like, the husband, or, sometimes the wife,
Really?
granted,
I was
but
going to say,
very rarely, very rarely. But usually the husband's like, you love your little puppy. I'm going to beat the crap out of it. And this is what I'm going to do to you. Or, like they would threaten the woman, or like a lot of times the women were afraid to leave because they didn't want to leave their animal, because they knew what would happen. And domestic violence shelters sometimes don't take the animals, or they have nowhere to go that will take the animal. So it was that is a hard situation. I feel for the animals a lot, because it's not fair. It's
I
really
I
not
would
fair.
never think that. Like, to me, I like that scenario you just said, you just thought, "Well, I'm gonna kick the dog," or, like, I wouldn't h even I didn't even realize that's a thing.
Yeah, it's the stuff that you see in animal abuse, like, I mean, you get your run-of-the-mill dog fighting, which is horrible, and most people don't even know that it goes on because it's so underground. But you get the people who, I mean, I had like a German Shepherd that was raped, and the vet recovered a metal broomstick handle, in the dog's vagina, and you could see like the hair on her muzzle was missing on, because she was muzzled, so she had like the hair missing because she was muzzled so often. And it's the chain of custody is broken a lot, so it's hard to prove these things because a person will come in and rescue the animal or something. And the animal cruelty investigations are like probably one of the hardest to do, because you have a victim that can only speak through their injuries. Most of the time you don't have witnesses, and the people who do it, I mean, you kill a dog, you just throw it in a garbage bag and put it out for the trash, and nobody thinks otherwise. Like a body, usually the bodies, are discovered, but the dogs are found in the bottom of the trash compactor that are thrown down, 20 stories in the projects and stuff. And you get these jobs, and it's like, does anybody know whose dog this is? Has anybody seen anybody with this dog? And then sometimes you catch them, and then you got to talk to them and see if they'll give you any statements. And showing empathy towards those people for me was hard, because I didn't feel like I was talking to somebody who had a heart and a soul. I was talking to somebody who just, did not care at all and would just willingly hurt something that couldn't defend itself. And that to me was just, you're missing something up here when you're
Right.
capable of doing that and not feeling regret for it. Granted, some felt regret and stuff, but some people just, they don't care. And that's scary to see that side of society too. You have your legitimate, upstanding criminals who are like, they just do their thing and that is what it is. And then you have the people that are just brutal people that are just out there to hurt. They just have this need and drive inside of them to hurt other things that can't defend themselves. And we need the people who see this stuff to report it, because, you don't report it, we're never going to find it sometimes.
How long did you do that?
The animal unit I was in for like 9 months. It was a brand new unit. It was me, this other guy, and the sergeant. And it was basically like the ASPCA had turned law enforcement for animal cruelty over to the NYPD. So we were like creating how the NYPD was going to handle this. I was creating PowerPoints to train cops on how to do investigations and how to, like, what to ask, and what to document at scenes and stuff. And then I was also going out there and looking for cases of animal cruelty that we could build cases on. And I was at the detective level, so it wasn't like responding to it. It was like, okay, here's a complaint for a dog that got hit by a car. Was it an accident, or did somebody intentionally hit it? Was it? So I did that for like 9 months. And my husband said to me, he's like, you're like depressed. Like, it's not fun. Like, police work was fun for me. This was not fun for me. This it was hard to see a lot of the stuff that I saw. And it was also hard for me to maintain a distance. Like, when you see people shot, and you see, I had a baby that with shaken baby syndrome, and I've held the hands of people as they died. And you do these things, and you develop a sort of a separation from it. Not that you don't have empathy and, feeling, but to survive in that world of being a cop, you kind of have to put those feelings aside and kind of forget about it, right? Just turn your heart away, do the job that you're doing, handle it, help the person, but then you have to be able to go home and like have a happy home life. And for me, the whole animal thing was just, it was like seeing the worst of society and the inability of justice to be brought. When you have like a baby that's hurt, or a woman who's shot and she's bleeding out on the street, and the husband did it, those criminals will be brought to justice. There will be a trial, and there will be witnesses presented, and they will get their jail time. A lot of the time with this stuff that I was getting, I couldn't make an arrest. Justice couldn't be brought, and it was rough for me to have to try and deal with that. So I left that unit and went back to the 105, back to the intel spot after like 9 months.
Okay. Other than the animal unit, do you have any interesting stories
Oh
that
gosh. I so so many. I'm trying to like think. like as you talk, you remember stories that would come up. Like I had a case where we had a robbery at a bodega. There's a robbery at gunpoint at a bodega, which is like the corner candy store for people who aren't from New York. It's,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that's
like,
people. It's not called a bodega; it's a bodega. But that's, you buy your beer and some groceries, and they kind of have your cigarettes and stuff there. So these places got frequently robbed. So my partner and I were in anti-crime, and the job comes over. So we kind of are circling the area to see if we see the guy, and they put a description over of like khaki shorts and a black hoodie, right? So I'm driving down and I see this guy walking, and he's got khaki shorts and he's got a black hoodie, but it's over his shoulder, and he's wearing like a white t-shirt. So like whenever
they'll never put
they
this together.
yeah, like we're not like he should have just chucked it and maybe, but the khaki shorts, but like whenever somebody put a description over, you always take the outer layer of clothing off, right? Because it's like, they're gonna lose it. So assume whatever the pant, like they never kick their sneakers off, right? So what sneakers was he wearing? So this guy happened to choose like these very bright red, white, and blue sneakers. So we jump out on him. And I'm assuming that he's got a gun still, because usually they don't chuck the gun because guns are expensive to buy on the street. So I yoke him up real quick. You take his arms, you approach him from behind. I put his arms behind his back as I'm saying, like, police, don't move or whatever. So he doesn't think that he's getting robbed on the street. And so I see he's got like a bulge in his pants pocket. So I grab it, and it's the cash from the robbery. So I'm like, all right, this is our guy, with this. So I
RJ.
take, yeah, like, how, what, like, do you not believe in banks? That's the famous, I don't believe in the bank. I just carry my cash on me all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's what every normal person does. Singles and fives and tens that just got taken out of a register. So, I take his sweatshirt and I throw it over my shoulder so he can't like chuck it. And I forget about it because it was black and it was dark out. So the victim comes, and we do a show up, and it's positive. So we go into he gets transported back to the precinct, and the detectives are going to do their interview, right? So I go back to the bodega, and he's got great video, this dude. I mean, high definition, color, legit video. And I watch what the kid does. He comes in with the black hoodie on, covering his face. And I think he thinks because his face is covered, we'll never solve it. But there are those red, white, and blue sneakers and the khaki shorts. So he was kind of brutal. Like he robbed the guy, he pointed the gun at him, robbed him, and then as he was walking out, another store worker was like sitting by the entrance, and for no reason, the worker was just sitting there, not moving, like just kind of frozen, doing nothing, and he just cold clocked him for no reason. And I'm like, that's such a jerk thing to do. So I have all the information. I get the video and everything. So I go back to the precinct, and he's in the box with the detective denying everything. I was just walking. I wasn't doing anything, just total innocent. So if you didn't know any better, this kid was very convincing. He did nothing wrong. You got the wrong guy. He would never do this. He was going to the store to get his mommy something, and whatever. So I just looked at him and I'm like, bro, we have you on video. And I just told him what he did in the store. And I'm like, you see the sneakers that you're wearing? I'm going to take a picture of those sneakers and I'm going to show it to a jury. And the shorts that you're wearing, I'm going to take a picture of those shorts and show it to the jury. And we're going to put the clothes that you're wearing now up next to the video of you robbing the store. Who do you think is going to believe the truth?
Right.
So I'm like, just cut the crap and be honest. So, he told what happened, and he ended up doing time or whatever. But you get nonsense like that of like just like, be honest. Like we had another guy one time when I was in the street
Did you ask him
narcotics.
why? Did you ask him why he punched the guy?
Yeah, I was like, why? That's such a dick move, dude. Why would you do that? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. I just did it. I'm like, okay, well, that's another charge. So good move. That's an assault 3. So congratulations. You just add another charge onto your robbery. And here's like the open-ended thing is that he didn't have the gun on him. So that was the other problem of like, I'm like, where did you ditch the gun? Because in my mind, I don't really know what his path of flight was. And, like I knew where I found him. So we would check the vicinity, but like from there to the store, like where else did you go that, because sometimes when they run, they hop fences and stuff. And he just was like, I just threw it over a fence. I don't know where it was. So we had a huge search for this gun, because the last thing you want is some kid to find it and play with it and have like an innocent life taken because, you didn't do a good enough job looking for the gun. So we never found it. He swore it was a BB gun, but I didn't believe him.
So
You can't.
you said there was another guy?
Yeah. So the another guy in the street narcotics unit, weed was illegal in New York City then, and weed. I wrote a little bit about this in my book that is like everybody thinks it's like a peaceful drug and like hippie movement and like love and peace, but my experience is that it precipitates every other crime. Only the real hardened criminals who are like up to legitimately no good and do like organized stuff, they don't smoke because they know it's an easy way for us to, once you smell it, that's it. We get the car, we can search everywhere. So regular everyday criminals smoke like everybody else does, and they would do other things like robberies and other stuff like that. So it would always graduate to other stuff. So we would go and look for guys smoking and stuff and try and stop that trouble from escalating into something more. So we stopped this car. It's a hot summer night. All four windows are down. There's four people in the car, and it's three girls and a guy, and each of them has like a blunt, and they're just smoking. All right. Well, then everybody goes. So we go to open the car, sir, step out of the car, whatever, police. And he's like, I'm not going. I'm not going. So now it's a fight trying to open the door, and he's screaming. And like my partner looks down and sees he's got the little blades, the razor blades in the little pocket of the door. So he's going to reach for the blades, and we're trying to stop it because I'm like, what's this guy going to like? He's going to slice me? Like, what is this guy doing? It's weed. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you're going to get a desk appearance ticket. I'm going to take your and you're going to be out in like maybe 3 or 4 hours. Like, it's not a crazy deal. Now he's fighting. So as he's fighting us, he starts screaming, Mama, Mama. And sure enough, across the street, out comes Mama wearing her curlers with the shower cap, the pink fluffy bathrobe, the slippers, running out there. Don't hit my son. Don't be, you police is beating on him, screaming at us, making this whole big chaotic scene over weed. And I'm like, this guy is sitting here with these three girls. I don't know if they were girlfriends or whatever, but they weren't going to be after this, because instead of being a man and being like, okay,
Right.
you guys got me, he's screaming for his mommy. I'm like, what are you screaming for your mommy for? But, you kind of, I mean, I don't know how other cops felt about this, but I always kind of gave respect to the guys who maybe tried to get away, but then once they were caught, they kind of were like, okay, you got me. And,
Right.
like I had this kid one time. It was Thanksgiving Eve, and I had off the next day, which was rare, right? So I'm like, okay, I don't really want to get involved in anything tonight. We're just going to drive around. If we see trouble, there's nothing we can do. But so we're driving around, and it was like 11 or 12. It was late, 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I got to pee. My bladder's going to explode. Let's go back to the precinct. I got to go to the bathroom. So we're driving this big unmarked van. So my partner spins around, and we're taking a ride back to the precinct. And as we're going, I see two guys running up the sidewalk in the shadows. And then I look, and there's like a Chinese delivery guy standing in the middle of the street with like bloody nose, blood pouring down his jacket. And I'm like, oh God, we just walked into, like, I have to pee. And we just walked into like a robbery. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now. Couldn't get worse luck than that, because like, you're wearing your belt, and it kind of puts pressure on your bladder as you're sitting there with like
Right.
your gun and all this stuff. So we said, we stopped the guy, and we're like, are you all right? Stay here. Don't move. We're going to go grab these guys. Cause we knew it was them. He's pointing at them, but they're running. So we catch up to them, and we get like a couple of blocks away. We jump out of the van, and we grab them. So I grab the one guy, and he's wearing one of those like billowy winter coats. Like, they're like, they add like 6 inches to your body. It's just like you're walking around like human snowman. And he's got this jacket on, and he's got blood. It's a white jacket. He's got blood all over it from the victim. I'm like, well, you just incriminated yourself, like, whatever. And then his buddy was with him. So my partner grabs his buddy, and his buddy was very tall. And this guy was about my height. So I'm putting over that, we have a pickup robbery. This is my location. The victim's over here. Get an ambulance over there. I need another car over here. So I have this guy up against the fence as I'm putting over the radio, and my partner's trying to cuff the other guy. So I put the radio in my back pocket. I go to cuff this guy up, but I can't find his wrist because of this stupid puff jacket. And I'm like, I can't find his arm. And he literally just does like the quick body twist. And I'm left like with the jacket. Like, like there's nothing for me to hold. I'm not holding onto his body part. I'm holding his jacket. So his jacket just rips out of my arm, and he's gone. So I go and take after him. Meanwhile, my partner started the other perp started fighting with my partner. He got off of him because he's in another puffy jacket. So they go running in the opposite directions. Now we have like 2 foot pursuits in 2 different directions. So my guy makes a left and goes like northbound on the street. And I'm right behind him. And as soon as I turn the corner, he's gone. I don't see him. It's like vacant street. And I'm like, he couldn't have gotten far. He went up this block. So, I put over the location, foot pursuit, whatever, and the last known location that I had in his description. And I turned my radio like almost off to like the lowest volume possible. Cause I'm like, he's here. I know he's here. So I'm creeping around and I get like to the next house up and I look up the driveway and in the back of the yard, there's this huge, beautiful maple tree. I mean, it was just like, it must have been 100 years old. This thing was ginormous behind a garage. And I'm looking and in like the street light from the other side of the street, I can see branches moving. And I'm like, we have a lot of raccoons in Queens, but there's nothing that's going to make this type of disturbance. So I'm like, this bastard's in the tree. I'm like, nice try. I got him. So I'm like creeping, trying to like get up the driveway so I can kind of get the jump on him because he's at such a disadvantage. And at this point, I don't know if this was like a strong arm robbery where he didn't have a weapon or if he had a weapon. So I'm just trying to like be able to at least creep up to him so I can get the jump on him, even though tactically I'm at a way disadvantage because he's on the top of the roof in the tree. So he sees me coming and he jumps off of the tree into the yard behind the house that I'm at. So I take off and I hop the fence. And as I hop the fence, my foot doesn't hit the top bar and I go down and I fall like, I think it was like a 5-foot fence or something. And I fall right on my ass on the concrete. And I just was like, another one, like the breath got taken out of me and I'm like, oh, and I see the stars and I'm like, that's something, something broke. Cause it doesn't feel good. So I get up and I'm like, oh, like I can't, my tailbone is killing me. And I'm like, I can't let this guy get away. Plus I don't know where my partner is. Meanwhile, there's like police lights everywhere. The whole street is lit up like daytime. Everybody, because it was very close to the precinct. So every cop from the precinct came out. Everybody's there. So this guy ends up getting found underneath the car in the driveway because when he went to go run up the driveway, he saw the other cop. So he just like dove underneath the car. And one of the detectives is like, he's under the car. Like, like just like nonchalant. He'd been involved in so many police pursuits. It like didn't even faze him. He's like, come out from underneath the car. Just come out. We got you. Like, it is what it is. So he came out and, the other guy was eventually caught. And so these guys, I ended up going to the hospital. I like broke my coccyx. So like the next day at Thanksgiving, it's like, you can't sit, you can't stand, but like, it was brutal. So I would see this guy over and over throughout the course of my career because I stayed in the same precinct for almost my whole career. So, he would always get in trouble for something. He just couldn't help himself. And every time I would see him, I'd be like, bro, what are you in here for now? And then he would tell like the guys that were in the cells with him, be like, yeah, she was chasing me and I broke her ass. He busted her ass because of me, like he would. So I was like, yeah, he did. I broke my coccyx because of this guy, because he was running from the cops and I fell off the fence. And then like the other guy I would see once in a while out there and they kind of stopped being friends after that incident happened with the robbery. But like I would see him on the street and I'd see him hanging out with guys that I knew were like criminals. And I would say his name as I walked up to him and I would be like his mom, like, what are you doing hanging out with these guys? And they would be like, yo, son, she knows your name. It was like, I felt bad for him because I'm like his mother chasing him around. But you see the same guys over and over and you have the mutual respect. But I'm like, he tried to run. Okay. You did, you didn't get away though. We got you. But it's that part of the job I really enjoyed because it was always like you never knew. I mean, I feel like I'm telling all kinds of crazy war stories now, but like talking about this story reminds me of like another time of chasing this guy who had stolen a car and like that whole pursuit or whatever. And it was like, that was the beauty of that job, is that you never knew what was going to happen during the day. You never knew.
I was just thinking about the jacket. I think it was a Seinfeld episode where like George bought one of those jackets. It's like they kept calling it. He kept saying it was made of Gore-Tex or something. I forget what it was. It was this massive. It almost looked like a snowman wearing the jacket. It's so fluffy and you can't get your arm. Like it's just that.
It's like the Christmas Story. He's just, you're
yeah,
walking
yeah,
around like
layered.
yeah. I hated those jackets because and you could hide stuff like perps would hide bags like in the sleeves. So
Yeah.
when you would, because it was, I mean, it was hard to feel anything. So when you would toss people in the wintertime, you'd have to like squeeze the sleeve so you could feel if they had like a mount. I mean, and women were also hard. I had one chick one time, narcotics had brought her in. She wasn't even my arrest, but she had narcotics. And I mean, it is what it is. You're going to hide stuff in every orifice of your body. So if there's an opening in your body, you're going to stick stuff in there. So they would need females to do like the strip searches once in a while when they suspected that she had shoved something somewhere where the sun don't shine. So of course that was me. So I'm like, I never enjoyed it. It was always an uncomfortable experience. So this one chick one time, I'm like, searching her, and I pull, because like women's bras have the underwire, right? So I pull it away and out falls a crack pipe with the rock out from underneath her bra. And I'm like, seriously, dude, like, why didn't you just tell me this was here? Now there's like broken glass. Like, what? So, I kind of kick it away to the side so that I can get her like, handcuffed in a way. And she's like, no, you don't understand. This isn't my bra. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, I just found it and I just put it on. I didn't even know that was in there. That's not mine. This isn't, look, the bra doesn't even fit me. Look, it doesn't even fit me. And I'm like, good try. Good try. Not gonna fly in court. I don't think you're gonna get away with that one. So, they
No, you
try and be
tell the
like
judge that,
slick.
but
Yeah, not not gonna work.
what was it? The guys, they do during the strip searches, they bend over, squat, and cough.
Yeah.
I always ask the cop, I'm like, why? Like, has there ever been a situation where some guy coughed and like a 22 dropped out of his ass? I mean, has that ever happened? And they're like, no,
Yes.
but you know what has happened? They're like, listen, you'll see like a cell phone or something, or they're like, it does work. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's stories that was the other part, was like the searching people on the street, is that guys love to hide drugs underneath
Yeah,
their.
yeah,
So, like you gotta like, and sometimes you don't have the manpower. Like I know I'm a girl, but I have to search you too. Like, we only have a certain amount of people, and we're outnumbered here by perp. So I have to search you, and you'd have to do like the tap to make sure there's nothing in there. And I can't tell you how many times you do the tap. It's like, yeah, I feel rocks. That's,
yeah. Right.
you either have some type of a severe disease where you have rocks forming down there, or you have crack, and I'm gonna need, I'm gonna need to go and retrieve that. So,
Um,
but you tried to make a joke of it, like, just a little pickle tickle, no big deal, whatever,
right.
just joking around. But it's like, I'm not getting pleasure out of grabbing, away. It's just, these are the orifices that are known locations for hiding stuff. So I have to go.
So, why did you? I mean, why you didn't ever want to go to like homicide, or go? Was there ever a specific division you wanted to go to, or you just, you know?
No, I didn't want to go too far from the street. Like the investigative work was interesting to me, which is why the intel spot was great, because we did case investigations. There was times where, you would, if you had a lot of perps and you had to brief them, you'd be in the precinct for, a few hours or whatever. So there was that aspect of it. But then there was the street. You had to go out there on the street and, do surveillance and do recon and send your informants out to do stuff. So that appealed to me because I got the best of both worlds. Whereas like going to work every day in like a suit and kind of like showing up afterwards, it just wasn't anything that I was really interested in doing, because I just felt like it was kind of an after the fact thing, and I still had the drive for like adrenaline and being on the street. And I felt like if I left the street, I might kind of eventually lose some of that savvy, because you're kind of just, responding after the fact. And, I didn't want to lose that ability to see stuff that's going on, because it's really amazing when you see, I mean, even now, like when I was driving down from New York, when I was driving to Florida, I was by myself moving, because my family had already moved down here. And I went into a gas station. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I pull in and I see, the mopes on the side over there. And it's like perps move the same no matter what state you're in. And I saw them and they saw me, and I saw that they were trying to like come over to me. And I'm like, they're going to try and see if they can rob me here. And I was happy because at least I was able to recognize that. Like I feel almost bad for regular people because they're just like waiting victims because you don't see that. So for me, that's why I love the street, because that stuff kind of pops out at you when you see it long enough. And I loved being able to be on the street and see that stuff and then be able to kind of take action and stop crimes, or, at least arrest the guy if a crime had been committed.
So when people did, was there, were there, so people would give you information, and then would you pass it on? Like you're talking to some guy and he says, listen, I know about this or I know about that. Do you then just call the detective that investigated that? Or do you guys go out and kind of see if you can put something together and then go and hand it off to somebody? I mean, I'm not
It
understanding.
depends. So it depends on the information. Like if you were talking to me and you're like, I have this scam and it's stealing money and it's involving this and this, that, and the other thing, like that might be like a grand larceny thing. So I would take all the information down and then I would call the grand larceny guys and be like, are you interested in this? Or if I had somebody who had information on a shooting or a homicide, or, they started talking about that, okay, I got to call the case detective, or if it's another precinct, at least call one of my detectives and have them interview you, because it's like, they have the information on that particular case. They know what to ask. And it also goes into like the court stuff of like, now he's making admission statements, or if he was involved in it. Now, does Miranda come into play and stuff? So depending on the information that you got, it depended on if you would refer it elsewhere or if you would keep it in-house and then build a case on it. So like we would do narcotic sales cases or people who were selling guns. We would, do that. But then sometimes you also work with other units. You work sometimes with the feds. You work with other precincts. You work with other counties if it goes that way. So it all depends on what information the person's giving you, and also if it's credible. You got to vet the information that they're giving you, because you don't want to be like getting information and then you call the case detective and they come down and stuff. And then he's full of shit because the story that he's telling isn't actually what happened. So you have to
Right.
kind of make sure that he's not lying to you. And we get lied to like all the time, or partial truths. It's like, all right, I'll be honest with you. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, that's not really the whole truth. Like I need I'm going to be honest with you. You need to be honest with me. So it would depend on what we had.
Did you ever have like professional informants that were like on the that were actually getting paid? Like I've read articles where there are people. Read an article one time I was in prison, but there was also I've read a few articles on this where there was actually, it's funny, this was actually a woman who her boyfriend was a drug dealer, and
Hmm.
she was black, and she had like a gold. They said they noticed, they don't show her, but she had a gold tooth. They said, but she was in college. They're like, she's like was 2 years into school. They said she could have, what they call their interview voice. She could speak perfectly, you know, or she could do the whole kind of street, lingo, right? The whole street vernacular, and talk like she had, like she was straight from the streets. So her boyfriend, who was a drug dealer, got arrested, went to trial like an idiot, got 20 something years. She goes goes to the DEA and says, look, he's explaining to me that there's something called the third party rule 35, which just means I can help you bust drug dealers, and you'll give him credit for it,
Okay.
which is a real thing. Um, in the feds anyway. So they talked to her and they went to the U.S. attorney. And the U.S. attorney was like, this guy went to trial. I don't care what, I don't care. It's one of those, I don't care if he tells us where Osama bin Laden is. He's not getting any time off. Like we were going to give him 5 or 10 years. He could have cooperated and gotten 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So they were like, no. But the DEA agents were like, listen, look at you. Like you're perfect because
Yeah.
you don't have she'd never been arrested. She's not in trouble. She speaks perfectly. They're like, and yet you can blend in and with these guys, and they spot us right away. So they started flying her around, and she did this for years. They would put her on a plane, fly her somewhere, have her do 7 or 8 buys from drug dealers. They said because all the drug dealers they see they want to sleep with her. Their first thought, they're questioning it. That overcomes any type of resistance, any type of caution that they have. They're like, oh, look at this chick. So she's buying whatever it is, crack or whatever they're selling. And these were like street buys most of the time. But I mean, she talks about one time where they had asked her to get close to like a guy, like go to like She had made some buys. They got invited to a party. There was a whole thing. They were like, it was super, super like undercover. And then they said the great thing is that she makes the buys we can't make. We put together a case. We bust the guys. And if the guys go to trial, she shows up, sits on the stand. And they said, unlike our other informants who have been arrested 7 times, who they're almost incoherent when speaking to them,
Right.
she gets up and she speaks, perfectly. I mean, she's 100% credible. And they were paying her, and they were talking about like, I forget what they were saying, but she was making, she was
A lot.
making whatever, 3, 4, $5,000 a month doing this for years while she was going to school. And that was the other thing they said. She's extremely flexible. Like she can go somewhere for 3 days or 2 days, or because of her schedule. And they had her schedule. They knew when she was between semesters. Super
That's
interesting. I
great.
mean,
Yeah.
there are guys that, I mean, I know there are people that do that. I was wondering if you ever had anyone like that, or are you paying people for information that's
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That I mean, that was yeah, I guess for most people, that's probably a motivating factor is like, they get paid for it. So there's there's the double-edged sword of like you have to, these people usually they're not like good people that come in from the street and it's like my neighbor's selling and usually these people are involved in thuggery.
right,
That's why they know the stuff going on. So you have to make sure that, we would pay the informants and you'd also have to make sure that they were giving you correct information. So you'd also test them sometimes. So we would do the same thing as like, go in and buy or whatever. And it would be like, we knew that it was a dud and nothing would happen. And if they come back with like a bag of or something, it would be like, all right, now we don't know. We were constantly testing to make sure that the informants were not lying to us to get paid.
right, or
You know, so
exaggerating, or
exaggerating what yeah, like making stuff up. Like a lot of times, like with information, you'd have to vet the information. Okay, this is the information that they gave us. Does it make sense, first of all, with the stuff that we know? Does it follow with what actually happened? Like, because we would work very closely with the detective squad on a lot of cases. But yeah, we paid our informants. That information wasn't like a private thing. That was part of, you're working for us. We're going to pay you. It's like a job, but we would also demand that they didn't use drugs. You can't, you're not going to lie to me. I'm not going to lie to you. You got to stop using. If you're an addict, then you're going to go get help. And I need to know you're clean before you come back to work. And,
and
because,
sorry.
God,
Well, I was going to say, and I mean, what are they getting paid? And when I say professional, like, is this all they're doing? Like, is it enough to to pay your bills, or is it like, they make $600 a month? Like, well, that's not enough. That's not.
yeah, I mean, it would depend on what they were doing for us. Like if it was gun stuff, it would be a certain amount. If it was, and then when you're doing buys, obviously the end game is to get a warrant. So we had to make sure that they were credible so that when they spoke to a judge, the judge believed them, because if the judge doesn't believe the informant, they're going to be like, yeah, he comes in here stoned and drunk and, I can't believe what he says. So we would have to make sure that the informants they were paid. We disclose that information, and it depends on what they bought. Especially if we work with the feds paid a lot of, they pay a lot of money or whatever,
What's
for information stuff.
what's a lot of money? Like, humor me with specifics.
Oh god, I don't even I don't even really for them it's like it's I don't remember exactly how much they were paying, but I know for us it was like, okay, go do a buy and we'll give you like, I don't know, $50 or $40 or something. It wasn't like a substantial amount of money. Um, but if they knew enough stuff, they could make a good amount of money, because it's like, okay, a guy here who sells drugs, a guy here who sells drugs, and this guy who has a gun, this guy who sells guns. And so it depends how much information they knew benefited them, because they would be, compensated for whatever the work was that we had for them. But you're dealing with people who are in the world of criminal activity. So they can't be like, getting into too much trouble or whatever. And, if they did get into trouble, sometimes they would have to go to jail, and you'd be like, you got caught. I can't help you out because it's going to give you up. So it was, you had to kind of be savvy. You had to think like a criminal so that you wouldn't raise up the other people and put this guy's life at risk, because really, informants are like the most important people, because they're giving information and you want to make sure that they're safe. So that was like our number one thing, is like, you have to be safe and you have to, we got to be in contact and stuff.
I had read an article in the New Yorker, God, this was 10 years ago. 10 or was it 10? 10? No, wait. Let's say maybe almost 15, probably closer to 15 years ago. This was, of course, in the really like the thick of the whole, war on terrorism kind of thing. Like they were pushing it every day hard. And there was a guy he was a professional, and this is like all he did. It was buying and selling weapons, but this was like internationally. And the terrorist task force was paying him because he was in the middle of helping set up what appeared to be, like charity organizations that were then taking money that was deposited there and buying weapons and smuggling weapons. And they would let him just blatantly kind of break the law for 6 months to a year to 18 months. And the amount of money that he was getting paid was, and I know this is completely incomparable, but we're talking about, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
It was outrageous. Like, and that girl, like I said, I think she was making like $3,000 to $4,000 a month working for the DEA, but they were like, and I'm sure she was the exception because that's why they wrote the article about her.
Right.
But, yeah, that's always interesting to me, that these guys, it's like, this is because I've talked to tons of guys that like, this is all they knew how to do was be involved in crime and drugs. And I always thought, some of these guys, like, they want to get out of it. They don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know what else to do. And it's like, well, you don't really, and I always think to myself, like, you don't really have to get out of it. Like, you could still, if that's your life and you like those guys and you like that life, but let's face it, those guys are coming in and out of your life all the time.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've actually broached the subject. I don't want to mention the guy's name. He's like a high profile guy. But he's actually thought about, he and I have kind of kicked this around, is that because I get contacted by people probably, and I never mention this, they just reach out to me because they're involved in some kind of crimes, some kind of criminal enterprise of some kind. They don't know what to do to get out of the situation because they have involved themselves, but suddenly somebody gets busted that's associated with them, and then 2 other people get busted. They know it's coming down.
Right.
And I had actually have talked to this guy and thought to myself, like, how cool would it be, or interesting would it be, let's say, to actually start like some kind of a consulting firm. And it's funny because I've actually talked to a DEA agent and an FBI agent recently.
For informants? Like,
well, kind of like for instance, and I give you an example is you're in an organization, like whatever, you're 30, 40 years old. You got 8 or 9 guys that are working with you, however large it is. You've been doing it for a while. Periodically, people get busted. Maybe something's happening, maybe nothing's happening, but you're running this organization, or you're a big part of it. And the problem is, most of these guys are like, yeah, I make good money doing this, and these are good guys. But at some point, you have to kind of realize, like, look, at this point, because these guys always kind of think they're either going to do it forever, so they're delusional, or they think I'm going to get a bunch of money and get out.
Never happens.
No, never happens.
Yeah.
But the other option is to go in now to law enforcement and say, I've been doing this. I'm not getting charged, and I will help now. I will help go ahead and infiltrate the organization, which I'm already in, and help you get stuff on everybody else. But either I'm keeping all my stuff, or I'm going to get paid for this.
Right.
But those people are too scared to reach out to law enforcement. And
so
they don't
be the middleman.
Right. How much, like, to broker that deal, like, could you get paid by them or by law enforcement? And this would all be federal. We were always thinking federal because some of these guys, look.
Well, that's where the money is. The feds have like the bottomless pocket. Yeah.
Well, typically when I get a phone call from somebody, not a phone call, but I get an email, some cryptic email or some cryptic, Instagram message, like, I'm in a bad spot. I need to talk to you. I don't know who to reach out to. I watch your stuff all the time. And, so you're like, okay, well, and sometimes if it sounds reasonable enough, then I'm like, okay. And I'll say, look, let's arrange a time to talk. And usually it's after they got like a target letter, like they're, it's like, okay, listen, bro, like
The walls are
it's,
closing in
yeah,
on you. Yeah.
it's already closing in. So
Yeah.
typically with those guys, I say what happened, and they tell me what happened. And then okay, here's what you need to do. You need to go ahead. They're like, I don't have any money or enough money to go get, or I talk to a lawyer, they want $40,000, or these guys want 20,000 up front, or these guys want, and I'm like, okay, go to the public defender. Like,
Yeah.
you're destitute. You need to go, you can't come up with that money unless you start selling off the assets that you've acquired, like a couple of cars or whatever. And you know what I'm saying? And usually the guys have pissed away everything. So it's like, look, go to the federal defender program. They will give you something. He's like, yeah, but I haven't been charged yet. It doesn't matter. You got a target letter. Like, they're like, no, but you got to be, no, you don't. Stop thinking you know what's going on. First of all, you know, I have this one guy who literally, so I send him to, I send him to the federal defender's office, and they immediately assign him somebody. So he calls me like, oh, they gave me somebody. She's going to call like in the next couple of days. I'm like, okay. And then like a couple of days will go by. I'm getting the text message. I haven't heard anything. Calm down. Give them a couple more days. They'll call. They'll get to you. Well, yeah, but what about the feds? I'm like, you got a target letter.
Yeah.
Bro, you're not even close to having they haven't indicted you yet. They're still investigating. They're just hoping you'll walk in the front door and confess at this
Right.
point.
Right.
I'm
Make
like,
their jobs easier. Right.
right. And so, I talked to him, and then eventually he did get a phone call. It was weeks later. And then it was, they're going to call the FBI, get back with me. They don't know how long that's going to take. I mean, literally, so 2 months later, he's like, what is taking so long? I'm like, he's like, I want to plead guilty. I'm like, right. And right now, if they said you could plead guilty, you're not getting a court date for 6 months, and you're not getting sentenced for another 3 months.
Right.
And he's like, what? I'm like, bro, you're looking at a year. And honestly, you're probably looking at a year to 2 years before you're even going to prison. It might be 18 months before you're going to a prison. So that I had to talk him off a ledge after telling him that. He thought this whole thing, he thought he could get 6 months to a year just based on the dollar amount. And I've calculated the dollar, I've calculated the federal guidelines for him everywhere. And I'm telling him like, prison is not what you think. You're going to a camp. You've never been in trouble. What are you doing? Like, so I've actually thought, how interesting would that be to have people that are in the middle of something that's been going on a while, and dealing with a bunch of people that deep down you can delude yourself, but it's going to come down around you. So your best bet
Yeah.
is to go now, even if they've heard about you. Now, if they haven't heard about you, you're in even a better situation. But they may know who you are.
Right.
They're still trying to put together something. Now you could also go to them then and say, look, I need to walk away scot-free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-preservation.
Right.
I would be cautious with that, because one of the mantras that we had was like, you cannot tell anybody. You can't tell your girl. You can't tell your mama. You can't tell your boy who you think is your boy, because nobody is really your friend. And if they find out that you're cooperating with us, or if it leaks out, like we weren't worried about like computer hacking because everything was encoded and whatever. But like for something your level, like I would be worried, like, do you have a computer database with these people's information? How do we know that it's protected? Like we were very careful, even like when we would go into looking into like, buying stuff from drug dealers or whatever, like how many people we would go sit on the spot and see what kind of traffic they had coming in and out. And, how many people know this, because at the end of the day, we have to protect the identity of the people who are giving us this information. Their lives that's our responsibility. Their safety is our responsibility. And I took that really seriously. So my first thought would be like, okay, how many people know that you're going to cooperate with us? Because my objective would be zero.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to meet at the precincts. We're going to meet, in a different county, in a different borough, like as far away removed as possible from all of the people that At the federal level, though, it's got to be a little different, because you're kind of dealing with like a bigger bank account. Whereas what I was dealing with in like the city was people who were just hand in mouth. They were dealing, and then it wasn't like they had a savings account, or they had like the fund of like the town where Ben Affleck just takes his piles of money from a brick building and like disappears to Florida for the rest of his life. It was more like, I'm going to make what I need, and then that's we're going to spend it, and that's it. So they didn't have like the means of selling the cars and getting a hideaway and stuff and running from the situation. They were stuck there. And the sad thing was that these guys grew up with these people. Like, these were the people that they grew up with. So they looked to them as family. And, it was like, you can't think of it like these people are family, because if you guys all do the same thing and they get caught, they're going to say you're the trigger man, even if you're not, just so
Mhm.
that they, like, you can't look at it like that. You have to learn to take care of yourself. And I kind of took on like a maternal role sometimes with some of these informants, because I felt like they were kind of like lost souls. Like, they wanted to do the right thing, right? They wanted to come clean and just be like, this is wrong and I don't want to live this life anymore, but I don't know anything else. So I would kind of coach them on like, okay, well, let's go look at getting you a job. Like, McDonald's is hiring. Start at the bottom. Work your way up. Like, what do you like to do? Do you have a GED? Like, let's get you a GED. Let's get you enrolled in these programs and try and get them on the right footing to get them out of that life, because it like is a habitual thing, because then they get a girl and then the girl gets pregnant and now they're raising a kid and they don't have a job and now the kid's growing up in the same environment, and it's like a revolving door cycle in the inner city that I found that was like, it was depressing, because it's like they don't know how to get out of it. So I kind of tried to help them alleviate their guilt, right? And then be
Yeah.
like, it's okay that you're doing this. It's a good thing that you're doing this. And now we're going to help you to get out of this life. So eventually, you're going to be useless to me, because you're not going to have any information for me to, work off of. So I would
So
I would try and do that.
yeah, I was gonna say two things. So the one thing I had been thinking about was like using the YouTube channel to talk about this, and that
Yeah.
this is a thing, and then those people could reach out to you, pay you a fee. You could explain the whole situation. And then there would be somebody you could hand them off to on the federal system, right? So then the feds would, take it over at that point, but they can always talk to you and say, this is what they're saying. Is that okay? Is that, and
Right.
explain to them up front, like, look, just be very honest with them, because a lot of times, federal agents will promise you things that they can't promise you.
Yeah.
So, just explain to him, look, if he says, don't worry, you're not going to do any time, say, he can't prove that. He
Right.
can't promise that. Like, be honest with him how it really works and
Yeah.
what has to be reasonable.
That was
What's
big. Yeah,
sorry.
that was big for me. No, I
Yeah.
I I agree with that 100%. I would never, if the guy was gonna have to do jail time and we'd have to do like a proffer type of a situation, I'd be like, "You're gonna have to do the time." Like, I never
Yeah.
lied to them, because I thought that was the basis for a relationship, is trust, is really all that you have. And dealing with somebody who lies habitually for a living, right? They deny they ever do any criminal acts and everything. So the trust for me is like, if I get proven to be a liar, they're not going to work with me, because they're going to not trust anything else that I say. So I have no credibility. So I'm with you on that you have to be able to have the trust, and you can't BS people and just give them like a smooze job, because half of them know the system better better really than you do. The
Right.
criminals sometimes know the system better than the cops do, but they also know, like, they're kind of going on your word. They're
Right.
hanging on your word, and you don't, it's like a moral thing. I think sometimes you don't, you got to be truthful and honest, because you can't tell a lie and then be found out, because now it's over.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I agree, but not, unfortunately, not all agents are playing by that rule.
Yeah.
I mean, all the ones, of course, I talk to, they're all straight shooters, but you know, I know that's not the case, but
Yeah.
um, so I was going to say that would be great, because if they could contact me and I can be honest on every single facet of it, like cooperating, how it goes, what the time frame is, what you're really looking for, or
Right.
looking at, if anything, can you do pretrial intervention, can you, or diversion, can you, what if you go to prison, what prison you're probably going to go to, what that's going to be like, I could help them on every facet. And the other thing is, you mentioned something about the people, right? Like their family, because they're hang out with my boys every day. I hang out with them and this and that. So, um, I met a guy when I was on the run. I met a guy one time. They called him New Orleans. He worked at Home Depot, and I'll never forget this guy, because I was buying. I'm on the run, buying houses, renovating them, and selling them and refinancing them, because fraud is not a full time job. Like, I have plenty of money, but I have nothing to do. And I'm somebody who is always doing something. I sleep 4 or 5 hours a day. I have to get up. I have to go work out. I'm running multiple channels. I'm just always doing something. I feel bad for my wife. I'm a horrible person to be in a relationship with. There
Especially
are
because you don't like gator hunting, so it's, you know, kind of.
exactly, exactly. So this kid in New Orleans, I used to see him all the time at Home Depot because I'm always there picking up lumber, dropping it off for the guys doing the work and doing this and driving. I'm at Home Depot sometimes 2-3 times a day. So I would
Wow.
walk in, and the thing about New Orleans was what I liked about him. One, he's young. He's probably 24, 25. Black kid, uh, and almost ran wherever he went. Knew the store inside and out. And so if you said, "Hey man, where's such and such?" "Oh, I got to come. And you almost had to like run after him. Like wanted to help everybody. Where some of those guys are like, yeah, it's aisle 12, and they just kind of
Yeah.
walk off like they're
Leave
old
me
jerk.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you are in the customer service job, but
Yeah.
yeah, they don't know it.
They're upset they're working there.
Yeah.
He loved his job. So I remember seeing him, and I listen, after maybe 6 months of seeing this guy, I go, "Bro," I said, "Why do they call?" Because now I know him as New Orleans, Orleans or whatever. And I'd say, "Hey, bro," I'd say, "Why do they call you New Orleans?" And he goes, "Oh," he said, I used to live in New Orleans." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I said, he said, "Yeah." What did I ask him? Uh, I said, how'd you end up it was in Nashville, Tennessee. He goes, "Oh, Katrina." Or was it Katrina? Wait, what was the one that
Yeah.
hit New Orleans?
Katrina.
Katrina.
Yeah.
He goes,
Hmm.
"Oh, Katrina." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I was there when the levees broke." He's like, flooded my house. He said there was 8 feet, because my house was 8 feet underwater. He said, boats, came and picked us up. And he said, it was just destroyed my entire neighborhood. My neighborhood is not even there anymore. He was
Oh
like, "Yeah." I
gosh.
said, "Oh man, I'm sorry about that." He said, "Nah,
Yeah.
bro, it saved my life. Saved my life." And I went,
Got
"What do you
out of
mean?" He
there.
said, "Oh, I was selling crack, bro." He goes, "I was selling crack." He said, "My two brothers, well, one of them was like in prison. One's in prison. One was like dead or something. I got 4 cousins." He said, "They were all selling crack." He said, one of them got shot. He said, he died a couple years ago. He said, "My dad's in prison doing life." He sat there and rambled off a fucking tragedy of a
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And he said, he said, "Katrina came in, knocked everything out." He said, I forget what that big stadium they stayed in. He said, "Stayed in the stadium for so
Right.
many days."
Oh
He said,
gosh.
and he said, maybe 2 weeks afterwards, he said, my name came up. They stuck me on a plane. He said, "They flew me here. Home Depot gave me a job, a place to stay, and a vehicle to use, and a
Wow.
job." He said, "And a full-time job." He said, "I've been working here ever since." He said, "Well, I pay my own rent now." He goes, "I pay my own rent." He said, "I got my own car." He said, "That only lasted so long, but they kind of did it in phases." He said, "But I still got the same apartment." He said, and he was ecstatic. And I go, "Did you ever find out what happened?" Like, listen, this is his mother. Did you
Yeah.
ever have what happened with your mom or your cousins or anything? And he said, "Nah, bro." "I don't want to know."
He cut it. Yeah.
Well, and I was like, "You don't want to know because," I said, "because something bad happened?" He said, "I don't want to know because," he said, "that was a life I couldn't escape until Katrina." And I was just like, bro, like even now thinking about it, like I teared up when he was telling me.
Yeah.
It was sad, but he was so, this guy walked away from everything he knew
Yeah.
and he was ecstatic about it because he was in a situation he could not escape.
Yeah.
And then he ran in and got me like 12 2x4s and loaded and I took off, but
Yeah.
he was great. And the problem is with, and I always thought that too. So, after thinking about that a lot, I was like, wow, these guys are trapped. Some of these guys are trapped,
Yeah.
like
They don't know it though. I don't.
they don't, yeah, I don't think they do know it. I think
Yeah.
that it took that. He'd have never done that by himself. And that was his big thing. Like it saved me because he didn't even realize the situation he was in until they picked him up and stuck him in a better situation. And he
Yeah.
also knew, but he was smart enough to know, I can't talk to them. I can't go back
Yeah.
to them. I'm done. Like
Yeah.
they were a part of the system that was dragging him down. And I feel like that's something that you would have to tell these guys is you can't go back. Like
Yeah.
if you do this, you have to leave, but don't look at it as being a bad thing. You got to look at it as being, a gift.
I would
And that's
say that to a lot of these. Yeah, like I had a guy, we caught him with a gun on the street. You know, he tried to run or whatever. We grabbed him. It was a cannon. And I remember like he was just too nice. He was just, hey, ma'am, I apologize for that. I'm sorry that I ran. You know, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, you know, I don't know. There was like a kindred spirit type thing. Like I just felt like this. So, you know, we were sitting in the thing and I'm fingerprinting and whatever. And then I take him out and I'm like, I said to him, I go, bro, listen, you're gonna have to do your 2 years. Like I can't, there's no negotiating that. Like that's just a mandatory sentence. We got you with a gun, dead to rights. It is what it is. I'm like, but use your time in prison for good. Like
Yeah.
this isn't Shawshank Redemption. I'm sure they have like a library and you know, self-education classes. And I'm like, you can educate yourself and get yourself out of here because you're a gang member. You're going to come back and you're going to get the pressure to go fall back into it again. And I'm like, I try to explain like there's so much more to life, you know. And I feel like for me the police department was kind of like a redemption because I feel like I was like a lost cause. I was going all over the place. I didn't know what I wanted. I was just like, you know, flopping in the wind. And then it gave me like the structure and like, okay, you have to report it, you know, 1500 hours. Like, so it was like, you know, it led me down the path that I'm on now. And I try and explain to him, like, dude, I'm in a job where after 20 years, I get 50% pension. And I'm going to be, you know, 43 years old when I retire. And I'm going to be able to start a second life or continue if I want to. You know, a lot of guys stay cops. You know, you have all these opportunities. I said, you are living in a neighborhood where every day you have to worry about drive-by shootings. You have to worry about the rival gangs coming after you. You have to worry about going to jail. Like you're getting crushed from all sides. And this is not what life is about. I'm like, what about traveling? Like, have you ever been to like, you know, Italy or Ireland or, you know, anywhere? Like, get out of the city. Have you been out of state? You know, like have you left New York City? And it was sad because I followed this guy. Like there was a program where you get notified when they get released. And he got released and he moved out of state. And I don't know what happened to him, but I was hoping that he started fresh and
Right.
he saw like I have to get out. This is no good for me because it's sad. It's almost like I always, I mean, not to get like a too religious thing, but working in the city, I was like an atheist. I was an atheist already, and I'm like, there's no God here. People are evil. There's just evil everywhere. And I realize it's just because people don't, they're not enlightened. They don't understand the other side of life and that these people who they think are their friends aren't really their friends. It's a friendship of convenience temporarily. And the minute that you've got jail time hanging over your head or, you know, somebody's coming for you, you know, there's no honor there. And the only option is you're going to get shot and killed or you're going to end up in prison and ratted out by the people who you consider your brothers. So the real only option is to get out of that life. And how do you do it? You get an education. You get away from those people. You know, like you have to physically remove yourself from that scenario because these same people are going to keep coming around and maybe they don't mean evil for you, but they don't intend for you to get caught up in this, but that's the only life they know, and you have to get yourself out of it. And you know, it's tough to watch because you see it, especially when they lowered the age for crime in New York City. They did that lower the age thing. So like if you were 16 and you got caught, you were charged an adult, and they
Hmm.
raised it to 18. So now you had like these 16 and 17-year-olds that felt emboldened because they're like, I'm not going to do the time that I would have done. You know, like if I get caught with a gun, now I'm going to the juvenile facility as opposed to like the real jail. So it actually encouraged kids to do more crime. And I'm like, this is, you know, politicians are not usually helpful because they usually
No.
make the problem worse. I saw the change of like these kids who maybe were inhibited from doing things because they were like, I don't really want to go to real jail. Now they're starting even earlier because they know they're not going to go to real jail. And the earlier you start on that life, the harder it is to remove yourself. And it's like an addict. You just can't get out of it. So I think that's an admirable thing to try and create a program where you're not only helping people to, you know, turn on the other bad people and to, you know, solve the crimes and to get the guns off the street, but you're also trying to find a path for them to get out of that life entirely. That's the challenge, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say it's yeah. There's tons of excuses for these guys not to get out of that life. They give themselves tons of excuses. But the truth is, if they really sat down with a pen and a piece of paper and started doing the math and thought about it, like, you can go somewhere, you can live in someone's spare room, you can, what I'm saying, you can rent a room, you can get next to the bus line, you get a job, you start slow, and in a
Right.
year from now, you'll have all your shit together, and within a year and a half, you'll have enough money for a car. Like, you can fix your credit, you can get a car loan, you can get a better job, you can do these things. This is not impossible. Like, it's
Yeah.
tough, it's not as much fun, and it's not as easy as it is to sell drugs or
Right.
commit fraud or something. But you don't have to do 5 or 10 years, and those sentences only get worse and worse. And
Every
the
time you get
real
caught.
thing is, and you really have no clue what you're going to get. These guys all think that they're going to get 2 years or 3 years, and they end up getting 15, and they never saw it coming.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh my God, like, now what are you going to do?" You're
Right.
so
Now you're a
far
convicted
before.
felon. Yeah.
Yeah, now you're a convicted felon. You're getting out when you're, in your late 40s or 50s or something. Now you're starting over again from scratch, and you got somebody watching you. You got a probation officer watching you for the next 3 years. Like you had many, many opportunities
Yeah.
to.
It's sad that I don't know. I don't know. I think they feel to an allegiance. Like I would talk to some of these guys and they'd be like, "This is my boy." I grow up with these guys. I'm not ratting on them. And it's like, no, you gotta. I'm like, I don't know. I could never be a criminal because I can't do jail time and I need to sleep at night. Like I can't put my head on the pillow and know like the cops might be banging down my door at 5 a.m. on a warrant, like that. I can't deal with that kind of thing. So I would never be good at being a criminal because I'd be like a paranoid disaster. But I'm like, wouldn't it be nice just to go to bed and not worry like, are the police coming? Am I gonna get shot? Is my girl gonna rat me out? Because like just to be able to like live a good life. And
Right.
I
You didn't even like visiting.
I I hated going to Rikers Island. Yeah.
The island. Yeah.
Yeah, I hated it because I'm just like, I don't know, you're a bird. You can't be caged, and I would try and explain to these guys like you can't it's not a healthy lifestyle, but it sucked because it was just watching young kids enter the life because and the music too, like it's the whole atmosphere of like you emulate the guy on the corner because you see him in the flashy car with all the money and he's dollar bills, all this stuff. So that type of lifestyle is emulated, and I would see the kids that tried to do well in school, they would get beat up, they were bullied. I had like one kid one time, he was, I guess maybe he was maybe mentally, I don't know what the appropriate PC term is, mentally retarded or not Down
Right.
syndrome, but like something was a little off, and he was slow and he got beat up bad. The kids from school came and they bullied him and they beat the crap out of this poor kid. And I just remember I went to the house and he was just hysterical crying. And he wouldn't tell us who beat him up, but he was just so devastated because he's like, I'm trying to do well in school and he was slower than everybody else, and you get picked on for it. And it's not encouraged behavior to do well and excel. It's encouraged behavior to sling crack and make money the easy way and fight the system and whatever. And I would say to these guys, you're so smart. Like this scam that you have is so smart, and you're so smart the way you do it. It was so hard to catch you. Why don't you go work on the stock market? Go take your test and pass your Series 7 and go work on the stock market and make money legally. So you can, like the only thing that's going to rob it from you is like the government and taxes. Like that's that's your biggest thing you have to worry about. Like go and get a legitimate job. You're wasted talent. You're going to get shot out on the streets. This is such a waste. And for them, sad to say, most of the time, I think it went over everybody's heads, and they just, they didn't care. There might have been a few cases where I might have helped a few people, but you know, that's the life. That's what they do. But so that's why I kind of gravitated towards saving the animals. Like you see a cat on the street and it's like, oh my gosh, this thing, or like the dog that's beaten up, or it's freezing cold in the backyard and it's abandoned. It's like, I think you try and crave a happy ending sometimes being a cop, because most of the time you just see the same people doing the same thing, and it's a repetitive spiral. The drug addicts and the shootings, and it doesn't end. So it's hard to watch that. So you try and bring some good into the world by helping what you can.
Hmm. All right.
So.
Let's end
As I
on
go
that
on and
note.
on, I'm trying to think of funny stories to like lighten the mood, but this is, I mean, there's a reality of it, and then there's like the ball busting pranks that cops play on each other, because you are living in this world of like depression and sadness and horrible living situations that these people are in, and then the no sleep and problems at home because you're never home, and you're at work for 3 days and whatever. So I you would bust each other's balls relentlessly and play practical jokes, and that was how we relieved our stress.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button. Please hit the bell so you get notified. Also, share the video because that really does help. I have a Patreon. We put Patreon exclusive content on Patreon. It's like $10 a month. So you get stuff that happened like before we started or things that were cut out. Oh, you also get an unedited version. So if you're one of those guys that screams because we had to beep out or censor certain drugs and you get upset about it, well, for $10 a month, you can watch the uncensored version and you can hear all the drug and curse words you want to hear. So it's $10 a month. It's Patreon. The link is in the description. Also, we are going to put a link in the book to Amazon so you can buy that. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. See ya.